Hello, and welcome to another Business of Yoga chat. My name is Kate Lombardo. I am the yoga director at YogaRenew, and I am so excited for today's conversation to dive into some unexpected tips for success for yoga teachers. I think when you're graduating from a yoga teacher training, there are some standard things that we're often told in terms of how to get started and what to do to create success. But over my time as a yoga teacher, which has now been almost 10 years, and then moving into studio ownership and now online business ownership, I've learned a lot of things that I don't think we have enough conversation about and maybe kind of unexpected. And I want to talk about those today. So let's dive right in to go through these 5 tips that I have for you. And I hope that it is going to be jam-packed and filled with a lot of value so that you can really start to apply these to your teaching and to getting started as a business owner with yoga, whether that's as a solopreneur where you are a yoga teacher going out building classes, creating workshops and retreats, trainings, or looking at eventually owning your own studio or having a team working underneath you. So let's dive in. The first thing that I want to go over, and the number one tip that I have here to start, is to teach what you know. When you're in yoga teacher training, you're learning from people who are experts. That's why they're the teacher trainers. And they have a ton of experience. Quite literally, to be a Yoga Alliance approved teacher training school, the lead teachers have to be RYT 500 hour certified, and I think ERYT 200 hours. So I have at least 1,000 hours of teaching experience and 500 hours of training. So what they're able to teach you is going to be different than what you're able to teach when you first come out of your teacher training program. Now, I know for myself, when I first graduated from my 200 hour, I wanted to be just like my teachers. They could teach really advanced classes with advanced poses and had really cool creative sequences that all seemed to make sense. And I wanted to be able to do that exact same thing. But I didn't have the experience and the knowledge at that time to be able to do that. And full disclosure, I tried. I tried teaching more complicated poses with these like intricate transitions, but because I didn't really know what I was doing, those classes didn't go so well. Once I started to teach what I actually knew, which were simpler poses with more straightforward and simple sequences, that's when my classes got better and I started to attract a group of students who were at that point that's what they were ready to learn. So in teaching to a peak pose, nowadays, 10 years in, I teach headstand and different arm balances and handstand and fancy back bends. But back then, when I started to teach what I really knew, Ardha Chandrasana half moon pose was my peak pose for like every single class. My classes were simple and straightforward, and I began to attract students who wanted simpler classes because they were just starting out with their yoga asana practice as well. And over time, as I grew as a teacher and started to be able to integrate more advanced sequences and advanced poses because I became a practitioner of those myself as my personal practice expanded, then my students grew with me. Their practice grew right alongside of me. And many of them started out in like a beginner series with me and then went all the way up and ended up doing their own teacher training years later. But the key was that when I started to get clearer in my classes, that's when my classes started to build. So you don't need to come out of teacher training teaching what your teachers teach. Teach the stuff that you feel very, very, very confident in, the poses that you know that you can demo really strongly, that you could answer questions about if your students had them for you. Nowadays, I can lead a teacher training in person, demonstrate headstand, and talk my whole way through it. When I first graduated from my teacher training as a practitioner, I was still working at headstand at the wall and didn't feel super solid in it. So now I can teach it confidently because I feel like I know the ins and outs of it in my personal practice and can integrate that into my classes. But I couldn't do that at first, and you don't have to either. So focus on teaching what you know and what you can teach simply and confidently, and then you're going to attract students who want that from you. So that's the first thing right out the gate. You don't need to be just like your teachers. Just stick to teaching what you know. Okay. The next thing that's kind of a spin-off of that is that you should start out focusing on one style of yoga. And I get pushback on this because I know that as yoga teachers, we are interested in many different styles, but I love the flowy part of vinyasa, but I really like restorative and I love yin, and slow flow is really awesome too. And of course, as yoga teachers, that's why we do this. We're passionate about it. We usually fall in love with this first as a student of yoga, and because we love yoga so much, we want to get trained in it. This doesn't mean that I'm telling you that you can only teach one yoga style forever, but I think you need to commit to becoming an expert at one style that you're teaching. Start to really get strong with your cues, with your sequencing, with how you serve your students teaching that style of yoga. Do some more continuing education trainings. Talk to other teachers who are teaching those that you admire. Take their classes more. When you're able to do that and you focus on teaching one style and you get really, 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 really good at it, that's when you're able to serve a group of students from a much stronger and better place. And then once you have that, once you're like, I'm good, I feel solid in being able to teach, my yin classes, right? Like you commit to teaching yin right out the gate, and you show up and you teach yin and you do more yin trainings and you read yin books and you talk to your students and you figure out what works and you immerse yourself in that experience. Once you feel like you're good there, maybe then you're like, okay, I'd really like to start expanding and I want to teach a hatha style or a vinyasa style. And then you focus on building that into your repertoire and become an expert at that. So it doesn't mean that you can't teach multiple styles eventually. It just means not doing everything all at once. It's better to be an expert than to be a jack of all trades, if that makes sense. Because not only does that help to keep your energy more grounded, but it's going to help your students because you're going to be able to serve them in a much clearer way. And that can be really powerful. So the second tip is focus on one style of yoga to start and then build on that as time goes on. Okay. The third tip that I have is a more business oriented tip, not so much on the teaching side, but that's that you don't need a website yet. When you're first starting out building a business as a yoga teacher, I just think a website can get you so caught up in trying to create all the pages and all of the buttons, and it can be really complicated and expensive unless you know how to do it. Like if you're a web designer, go for it, make your own website. But if the idea of having and creating a website is overwhelming to you, you don't need it to start out. Instead, I would focus on creating one social media account that you can commit to really posting content on consistently. So figure out where your people are. Is that Instagram? Is that YouTube? Is it Facebook? Is it TikTok? Whatever that looks like for you, pick one and focus on consistently showing up to connect to people on that Instagram account. And then when you do that and you truly connect to people, they're going to want to come take your classes. They're going to ask you where they can purchase workshops from you. And when you get to the point that people are wanting to pay you directly for something that you're offering, a workshop or an online experience, an ebook, that's when you get the website. I spent way too much time trying to appear like I had this big, fancy, successful career as a yoga teacher rather than just having one. Right? I got out of yoga teacher training and I was like, okay, I'm going to create my yoga website and I'm going to get these pictures done and they're going to look so nice. And I'm going to have all these cool fonts and I'm going to pick brand colors. And I didn't really know how to create a website. So now I spent a ton of time trying to learn that. And it still only looked mediocre. So it wasn't the best representation of myself. And then I put it out there and crickets. Nothing happens. Just because you have a website doesn't mean people suddenly find you and want to take your classes. So I had spent a ton of time and a lot of money and it didn't really help me. Instead, had I dedicated that time to just starting to build relationships with people, asking them to take my classes, letting them know where I was teaching, getting to understand what type of yoga they were searching for, listening to the people that I wanted to teach, that would have been a way better use of time and helped me to grow and market my classes much more quickly. So when you're first starting out, skip the website. Wait until it's a point that people are like, oh, I was looking for your website and I couldn't find it. And then you can be like, oh yeah, I'm in the process of working on it. And it's totally fine. Once people are asking you where your website is, asking how to purchase something from you directly, that's when it's like, okay, it's time to create a website. And likely at that point, you will already have an audience of people. So you'll be making and earning some money as a yoga teacher, or maybe then it makes sense to invest in hiring someone to help put your website together for you, or buying a really nice template so you don't have to start it all from scratch. So yeah, wait on the website until focus on actually having a business versus looking like you have a business. That's more important. Now, this next one is probably the most important business tip that I can give to you from the start. Forget the website, but absolutely start an email list like yesterday. An email list right from the start is the number one thing that you can do to build an asset for yourself as a yoga teacher that is yours. As yoga teachers, you teach usually at many different studios, which means the students that are taking your classes are not technically your clients. Yes, they're your students, but they're paying someone else, and then that money gets filtered through you and that studio pays you. Right? So you don't have their contact information legally if it's coming to the studio. You don't have a way to directly market yourself to those people unless you have an email list and they sign up for it. So picture it this way. You're teaching at multiple different studios and you decide you're going to do a workshop at one of those and you really want to sell that workshop out. It's unethical to show up at the other studio and say like, hey, I'm teaching this workshop down the street later. You should all leave this studio and come. Right? You can't announce stuff you're doing at different places because that's a little unethical to the studio owners. But what you can do after class is say, hey, everybody, I sent out a weekly newsletter with inspiration and tips. You should sign up to join my email list. Here's a clipboard with a sign up sheet here. Let me know. I would love to be able to send that to you, right? They sign up, they give you their email list, you put it into your email service platform, and you send out a weekly newsletter with inspiration and tips. You connect to your students outside of class. Now, when you're ready to teach that workshop, you can email your list and say, I'm teaching a workshop at such and such a studio. You should all come. And this is an ethical way for you to promote what you're doing all around to all of the students who have chosen to give their email address to you. And because you've been emailing them each week and connecting with them, and you're on their mind outside of just the studio that you've met them through, they're likely to then want to sign up and do this with you. So starting an email list is the way for you to make students that you meet other places your personal clients, where you have the ability to get in touch with them and eventually sell to them what you're offering, to let them know about retreats you're doing, trainings you're leading, or if you ever decide to open your own studio or launch your own online course or have YouTube videos, whatever that is, that's the way to get in touch with them. So starting an email list right from the get-go for your people to be able to connect to you outside of wherever they've met you is instrumental to your business. And the other thing is that the ROI on an email list is something, I'm going to like misquote the actual statistic, but it's like 40 times social media or something like that. Like it's like a crazy statistic. So start an email list and push people to it. Ask people who are taking your classes to sign up. Talk about it on your social media account. Let people know, and then make sure you actually email them. That's the key. Email them every week so that you're able to connect with them. Think of it as a way to send letters to a pen pal, but those pen pals are your students. Do it like right now. When you finish watching this video or listening to this, start your email list. Okay. The last one that I have for you, and this is more just a mindset tip, is to focus on serving one student really, really well. In an age of social media, it is so easy to look at people who have 2,000 followers, 5,000 followers, 10,000 followers, 50,000 followers on Instagram. And they're out there promoting their classes. And you know that they're teaching to 40 people in a room and they're able to sell out their workshops. And you can sit there going, oh my gosh, like I had 3 people in my class the other day. I have 200 people who follow me on Instagram and half of them are like my mom's friends. How am I ever going to do this, right? It starts with one student. All of those people who now have 40 people in a class, who have 50,000 followers or more on Instagram, they started with one post and one student, and they didn't have a lot of followers at first. Everyone has to start somewhere, And when you show up and you teach really, really, really well to that one student, you might be able to help that one person fall in love with the practice of yoga. And they might forever and ever and ever practice yoga for the rest of their lives. And that means you have literally changed and transformed that person's life. Like if you graduate from yoga teacher training and one person falls in love with this practice of yoga and you have changed their life forever, that's huge. Like so hugely important to be able to change someone's life truly, to make it better for the rest of their eternity, so that every single person they come in contact with gets to be in contact with the best version of that person. And you did that as a yoga teacher, it's worth it. Don't get caught up in the vanity numbers. Don't worry about how many thousands of followers or how sold out your classes are. Yes, no question, there's like a financial component, and I get that. And that's like where those business tip comes in. And that's why we talk about this stuff. Like, I want you to build a sustainable career and be able to make money as a yoga teacher. And you need people to take your classes to do that. But it takes a little bit of time to get there. It takes consistency, and it takes the commitment to showing up for one student as if they were 50,000, right? So you need to show up ready, passionate, and excited to teach every single time you teach, because that one student tells someone and that becomes two, which becomes five, which is all of a sudden how you have 40 people in a room. So don't get discouraged if you're not immediately walking into a full room of people who all absolutely are like, I can't wait to come back. You start building out slow. And when you set that kind of solid foundation from there, those people are going to be there forever. Those are your lifelong students who, when you announce your first retreat, they're coming, right? And they can't wait to sign up and learn from you. Or when you say, I'm going to lead my own teacher training, they're going to sign up with you because you are their teacher. You're the person that helped them to fall in love with yoga. So serve that one student really well and keep doing it over and over. And in time, I promise that audience will grow. So these are the 5 tips that I have for you today to focus on, to provide maybe a different lens to look at things through when you're first starting out. As a quick recap of those 5 things, the first one is that you should teach what you know. The second is that you should teach one style of yoga and get really, really, really good at it. The third is that you don't need a website when you're first starting out. Please don't spend the money and a ton of time on doing that. The fourth is you do need an email list. So please spend the money and the time on doing that and get people on that email list as soon as possible. And the last is to focus on serving one student well. Don't worry too much about building the audience yet, though if you keep coming back and watching these videos, I'll also tell you ways that you can make sure to grow that audience and really truly earn an income as a yoga teacher. All right, that's all I've got for this chat today. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Please let me know what other topics you would like covered so that we can continue to help you as you grow as a yoga teacher and as a business owner in this yoga and wellness space. All right, have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.